Okay, and we are live on Facebook. Welcome to the Friday Law Talk. My name is Fallon Hamilton, and I'm a staff attorney with Lone Star Legal Aid. I am joined here today with my colleague, Ethan Bishop Watt, and we have two special guests from Restoring Justice who I will introduce individually since they are both here with us, and I'm just so gracious, especially for you, Drew. So before we get into all of that, I just want to give the disclaimer that this is a live presentation that is intended to provide legal information only, and it's not to be construed as legal advice. So today we're here to talk about helping clients get ahead after run-ins with the criminal justice system. Traditionally, Lone Star has been an organization that has been able to help people with a number of civil legal services. We kind of handle everything from family law to evictions to housing to public benefits. In 2018, we were offered a grant which allowed us to start taking a few more cases that kind of fall under a unique umbrella wherein they are civil in nature, but they are handled in the criminal courts. Myself, along with Ethan, have been working tirelessly since 2018 to kind of help people who've been coming into our office with issues that are quasi-criminal, but we kind of saw a need to assist more people. And that's kind of where Restoring Justice comes in. So just a brief history on Restoring Justice. It's a 501c3 organization that has been founded in Houston, Texas in 2016. They provide holistic, legal, client-centered representation to marginalized members of our community facing criminal charges. They offer expert criminal defense, social services, trauma-informed counseling, spiritual support, and just so many other services that individuals need. With us, I have one of their staff attorneys, Neha, and she is joining us today. I'm so glad. And we also have the founder of Restoring Justice, Mr. Drew Willie. And Drew, your resume is just ridiculously phenomenal when it comes to the work that you put in just in the Houston area, in Texas as a whole. I know that you received the training from Gideon's Promise. You worked with the Texas Innocence Project. You were a public defender. You've had all these opportunities where you have proven to be dedicated to providing criminal legal services to indigent individuals in the Houston and surrounding areas. So definitely want to welcome you and give you the opportunity to just introduce yourself and kind of say who you are and why you're even in existence. And then we'll kind of get into how our organizations are going to work together to help people in the Houston area with criminal histories and criminal problems and convictions and all those sorts of things showing up on their records. So I'll pass it to you for your shining moment, Drew.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try not to argue with you on some of that resume stuff because, I mean, I did do some, I would say, constitutionally adequate things about representation of clients in Galveston. Others said it was bold and led to, being in the New York Times with this case with this judge. And I think, as an intro point, with Restoring Justice, we focus on indigent defense. And so, a lot of other groups like Lone Star Legal Aid is necessary for us to provide holistic support. At the same time, I understand a lot of other nonprofits historically haven't covered criminal indigent defense because the system is supposed to, right? If you're accused of a crime and you could go to jail, the system is supposed to provide you with an attorney. The indigent defense system across America, and particularly in Houston, is just completely broken. And when I got trained by Gideon's Promise, I wasn't practicing before going into the work. And so I had this very gold standard kind of view of which really they teach, like what's constitutionally required, adequate investigation, adequate advice to your client, going to jail to meet with your client, right? Going to the scene of the crime, these things that have been found by appellate courts to be constitutionally required of criminal defense attorneys. And then I came out into practice and none of those things were being done, not even close. And it was just kind of shocked and horrified and trying to stand up to ensure that those things got done, at least for my clients, caused really significant pushback. And once I realized that that's what was going on in the system, mass incarceration and the disproportionate effect to people of color just took a whole new world of, hold on, everyone in here, their rights are being violated. And why is that happening? Because they're poor? Oh, well, how does that not make them political prisoners, you know? And so really birthed out of understanding the crisis that is going on in our indigent defense system, Restoring Justice was built. And I'm really glad Neha is here because, you know, as founder, we've had this vision, this model for a long time, and Neha really exemplifies the front lines currently of what's going on in the organization, like executing this vision and really raising the bar and changing the culture in indigent defense in Houston so that then the system can fix itself. So if now's a good time, I'd love for Neha to introduce herself and explain our services a little bit.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Fallon, and thanks for the intro. My name's Neha. I'm a pretty young attorney. I graduated from the University of Texas School of Law in May of 2019 and moved to Houston to work as a civil litigator at a big firm here and just didn't find the work fulfilling. And I think like a lot of people, the pandemic was a bit of, you know, like a be honest with yourself moment. What is it that you care about? What do you want to do with your life? And from there, I realized that, you know, when it comes to the law and when it comes to the type of lawyer that I want to be, there's really only one area of law where the most number of people are harmed every single day by the state, and that is the indigent criminal legal system. And so from there, I, you know, saw this open opportunity at Restoring Justice. We were hiring our first class of staff attorneys. And they were kind enough to have me and to train me. And I started in December with our two other staff attorneys, Brianna Argueta and Eric Sundin. And we've really hit the ground running. And, you know, as the legal team, we're kind of the first pillar of services that our clients encounter. And we're, from the outset, taking a lot of action that their previous attorneys were neglecting. And so, you know, we're kind of embodying that client-centered aspect of the mission, because what's missing in a lot of legal cases involving poor people accused of crimes here in Harris County is that they're just not being centered at the case. People are forgetting, and when I say people, I mean every actor in the system, including the judge, the prosecutor, and their appointed attorney themselves, are forgetting the full person that is at the center of the case. Yeah. And our job is, you know, first and foremost, to bring that full person back to the legal case, and to make sure that the big decisions in the case, you know, the ultimate outcome of the case is something that's driven by the client themselves. And we work very, very closely with our social services team, which is our second pillar of services. And they really kind of flesh out the holistic aspect of our mission. They're there to provide support to our clients in all other aspects of their life that may have been impacted by their criminal legal case, or maybe other aspects of their life that kind of brought them into the criminal legal system in the first place. And that's something that our system is also really fails at doing. You know, we kind of talk about preventing crime as a really abstract concept. But the system does a really poor job at kind of looking at the cause of crime itself, which is often, you know, social problems like lack of housing, lack of employment, lack of treatment, mental illnesses, and substance abuse disorders. And so our social services team is so crucial in connecting our clients to these resources that are going to empower them to, you know, take control of their legal case and also achieve their personal goals that they've set for themselves in their lives, and, you know, hopefully prevent future contact with the criminal legal system. Our third pillar of support is tied pretty closely with our social services team, and that is our mental health partnership with Alethea Counseling, which is a counseling group here in Harris County. They provide trauma-informed treatment, which is proven to be really, really effective at supporting people who are re-entering after incarceration, and just generally people who have experienced trauma, which is the majority of our clients by the time we get their case. And our fourth and final pillar of support is our Adelphoi program, which is our community volunteer program. And the word Adelphoi is just a Greek word meaning brother or sister. And if our clients choose, our Adelphoi coordinator, Mike Nichols, can pair them with a community volunteer who shares their interests. Maybe they have a common faith. Maybe our client wants somebody to pray with them, or read books with them, or play sports with them, or talk about movies, grab coffee, whatever it is. Their job really is just to be an additional level of kind of social and emotional support and spiritual support for our clients outside of their legal case. And, their job is not really to be involved in the legal case at all. They're just a person to kind of walk with our clients. And so these four pillars come together to create a really robust network of support that keeps our clients empowered and in a position where they can make decisions about their cases that are informed and that are conforming with their goals for themselves.
That's amazing. That's it sounds almost too good to be true, but it's necessary. So when we look at the work that we're doing at Lone Star, like I mentioned, we do civil services. So all the new things that we've been able to do to kind of go with the criminal cases is kind of falling under the umbrella of record clearing or assisting with reentry for people who need to reestablish licensing or get copies of their background checks. And Ethan can speak on some of the other cases that we handle that kind of fall under that realm, where I see a partnership or just us being able to help each other is that gap. So you mentioned just kind of like all of the things that caused difficulties once a person has been just, the criminal justice system is in your life. Now we see all of these changes. We see you have difficulty finding jobs. You have difficulty finding housing. Just, it's like a trickle down effect that kind of just keeps people in a poverty cycle. The gaps where we can fill in, and Ethan, feel free to jump in. Everything that you all are doing, pretty much we can do with the civil law, but it's helping the same population of people. So I think that's a great just place for collaboration and to do great work in the Houston area. Ethan, did you want to talk about some of the course of cases we kind of do?
Yes. So, as Fallon said, we got a new source of funding in 2018 from the MacArthur Foundation to do something totally new to our organization. Before we existed, so in 2018, Fallon came on and I transferred from another unit, and together with our manager, Ty Wynn, we basically created this unit doing effectively an entirely new area of law for us. We had attorneys do expunctions and non-disclosures, but we didn't ever have anybody who specialized in it. And so that's where we started. And for the first year to year and a half, Fallon and I both did almost exclusively record clearing. And in late 2019, early 2020, I discovered some significant issues in the criminal justice system at the lowest level. So they're called Misdemeanor C Violations. And I'll get into that briefly, but since then, I have moved on to focus on those, whereas Fallon has become an expert specialist in record clearing. And so technically, misdemeanor C crimes are crimes. It's criminal law. But in a lot of ways, it's, the impacts of them are less criminal justice and more civil justice and issues like that. And so the reason I got involved and sort of started focusing on that is because misdemeanor C cases are the one type of criminal case where you're not entitled to a court-appointed attorney. And so you've got mostly poor people getting herded effectively through the criminal justice system at the justice of the peace level, where traditional rules of evidence don't apply, traditional rules of criminal procedure don't always apply, and they're suffering severe, sometimes years long consequences. And in Texas, it's particularly bad because even though misdemeanor C cases are technically fine only, and that is the reason that you're not entitled to an attorney, because the only criminal penalty at risk is supposed to be a fine. But in Texas, you can wind up in jail from having a misdemeanor C violation, and at no point will you have an attorney appointed to you. And so that's, like I said, that's why I became interested in it, why I became involved. And so that's a lot of what we do, a lot of what I do now. And so along with representing people in misdemeanor C cases, a larger portion of what I do is representing people who in some way have failed to handle their misdemeanor C cases. So these are cases where you haven't appeared in court after getting a ticket, or cases where you may have had a payment plan or a fine that you then couldn't afford to pay, and you never went back to court, and so now your case is in a failure to pay status. And so the result of those types of issues are almost always a license suspension. And then people, they still have to drive, they still have to go to work, they still have to take their kids to school, and then they get pulled over and they wind up getting driving while your license is invalid, and those things pile up. And they, like I said, they can create years long suspensions of driver's licenses, which then again only pile more driving offenses on top of it. And so we do, or I mostly do, those kinds of cases. So helping people clear old tickets, helping people get their licenses back, helping people who can't get their license back get an occupational driver's license, that sort of thing. And so it's a combination of actual representation in misdemeanor C cases and helping clear old unhandled misdemeanor C cases, all in the effort of civil remedies like getting a driver's license back or getting an ID. It's not uncommon for people who are low income that come to us to have lost their driver's license and their social security card. Now, it turns out you need an ID to get your social security card, and a lot of Texas employees of the Department of Public Safety don't know that, they believe that you have to have a social security card to get your license. And so there are alternatives, but another part of what I do is helping people navigate that system. And so there's so many barriers to reentry, or like dealing with a ticket that you couldn't handle because you were homeless, or because you just couldn't afford it, or because you couldn't get off work to go to court. There are so many valid reasons that you may not have been able to handle something, but a lot of the courts don't care. And so, yeah, that's on top of the record clearing that Fallon spoke about. That's a lot of the work that we do. And so getting to the kind of collaboration, I think, with Restoring Justice is that we can only do misdemeanor C cases, and you guys only do higher level stuff. And it's not uncommon for somebody who has open misdemeanor C tickets to have open higher level cases where technically they would have a court appointed attorney, but as you guys said, it isn't always being handled properly. And so now that we are working together, if I feel like I've got a client who comes to me that is telling me that they don't feel like they're being listened to or adequately represented, I now have a place where I can send them and say, hey, these are people who may be able to help, and And so I think like our level of collaboration can be really great, because a lot of the time those frustrated, overworked court-appointed attorneys do stuff in the higher level criminal cases that really mess things up on what I'm trying to help my client with. And so I think there's a lot of potential for collaborative.
And vice versa.
Yeah, yeah,
If they're in traffic jail, and
Yes,
they don't show up
definitely
to
vice
felony
versa.
court.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love what you said about ID restoration too. I mean, I'll just tell you, every single one of our clients, we're pretty aggressive, as you might imagine, with bond arguments, lowering bond. We had a bail fund over the summer. The bail project is now doing work here, and so getting our clients out. The prevention, what prevents social services from getting going, is the ID restoration. So I think that is so huge.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
is.
for employment, for example, I mean, it's really, really difficult to get a job if you don't have an ID. And oftentimes, you know, it's something that the court is asking for while a person is on bond, maybe as a term of their probation, that they have a job and check in with their officer about that. And they can't do that if you don't have an ID.
A lot of times shelters won't even take you in. So, I mean, imagine our clients are coming out of jail. The jail will print you a picture card that has your jail number on it. Shelters don't accept that as an ID, and then you're literally just have no choice but to walk the streets.
Yeah, and that's just continuing the cycle. A lot of the clients that I'm sure you see would have issues with evictions or issues with just family cases or just a hodgepodge of legal things that you all wouldn't be able to handle, that we would be able to fill in the gaps. And just a question I just wanted to pose to you all: when it comes to helping clients get ahead after run-ins with the criminal justice system, what are your initial thoughts as far as what we as advocates can do, what our organizations can do, and what real services can we provide to the citizens in Harris County who would need representation due to their indigency?
Yeah, I think, and I was going to bring this point up, so to kind of take a quick step back, right, is this whole idea of holistic services. Holistic services traditionally in the legal kind of mindset really was defined for the country by Bronx defenders as it related to indigent defense. And their version of holistic services was, you know, holistic legal services. So you'd have a criminal defense attorney, a family defense attorney, eviction, different attorneys that can help you with all the civil matters, record clearing, ID restoration. And what we have kind of built is recognizing that, but not having the resources to be able to have that kind of legal, civil, holistic services. And so we built our definition of holistic is more about like the client care, obviously the social services, the counseling, the spiritual volunteer connections. And so that's why I'm so excited about this partnership with y'all, because it's finally this manifestation of like, well, when we say holistic, it also means that more traditional term of holistic legal services to where we can provide our clients. Because I'll tell you, I mean, it's tough out there when you've got a client that we're trying to get through felony probation and they're dealing with a family defense case and CPS, right? I mean, they combine. And so the attorneys have to communicate and have to have a strategy so that one situation in one court across the street in the criminal court, they don't step on each other's toes. And so, I mean, I just see a lot. To answer your question, right, is like there's just so many ways of how we can partner, because as we do the criminal case, frankly, like cascades into everything, right? If someone's about to go to prison or their bond's going to be revoked or they're serving on probation, I mean, that's going to affect any civil case.
Yeah.
Same thing with a lot of the civil cases on the criminal case. And so if we can collaborate and come together, you know, that's really talking about a new level of freedom from a bunch of legal chains, right, for these clients. And it's going to be really impactful.
Yes, definitely excited about that.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about, specifically with respect to housing representation and eviction defense, I was thinking about how there may be some potential for a partnership there, but unfortunately for so many of our clients, by the time they come to restoring justice, they've already been sitting in jail for months or sometimes years on end. So the harm when it comes to things like housing and employment has already happened, right? They've already lost their apartment. They've already, maybe their home's been foreclosed on if they owned a home. But as we're growing and as our intake model changes, there are, and as people at the jail kind of hear a little bit more about us, there are some clients that we're getting that are a little bit earlier in their case. And there may be some potential there for someone who is, at immediate risk of losing their housing, where, a civil eviction defender would be crucial to their case, right? Because, if they lose that housing, then that's one other piece of the puzzle that say, we want to make an argument to reduce their bond because their bond is too high and they can't afford it. Well, the judge is going to want to know where they're going to stay, right? When they're out of bond. And if they've lost their house, well, now we have to start from scratch. That would be a huge, material benefit to our clients.
Well, and even in cases where you guys have people come to you that houses have already been foreclosed upon, evictions have already been rendered, that sort of thing, we do also have attorneys at Lone Star that can help with creditor issues, that can help with bankruptcy issues. And so even when you guys come across those, if you've got, a creditor trying to put a lien on this person's, minimum wage job or something like that, especially something that's clearly unlawful, but the creditors get away with it because nobody challenges them. We've got attorneys in our office that can even help with that level of stuff, which, as you guys said, if you're getting out of jail and trying to find a job and you've got a bank, reporting a foreclosure on your house or an apartment complex reporting an eviction, all of that, all of those things are barriers to reentry that you guys have to deal with that, we can help with.
Yeah. One thing that I see is people just not knowing. So I think in addition to our advocacy, just providing the information. So I've had so many clients that come to me after they've done a deferred adjudication or been on probation or community service, and they have no idea that, okay, well, they said this case was dismissed. They don't realize that, hey, there's an additional part after this. So people are really just walking around here thinking they're all scot-free with nothing showing up, not realizing that there's another step. So I think it's very important to do a lot of the informing as far as advocacy, because so many people out here don't realize that, hey, I can get this sealed. Hey, I can get this case expunged, or all of these things. I know a lot of times people do just enter into deals or pleas and not really know what, I guess, the result's going to be after they finish it. So that would be just super helpful across the board.
And even when they're not able to seal the record, that knowledge is power, right?
Yes.
Like us being able to explain, here's the ramifications of what happened, even if it was something that was a conviction or you can't get sealed. Well, just being able to explain, right, in a job interview, because hopefully, society is moving and ban the box, all that kind of mentality once private companies start doing that. However, there's a real ability for job applicants to explain away things that might otherwise just cut them off. So if we can provide them that knowledge of like, here's the reality of what happened to you, so that you can better explain to a potential employer on like, hey, yeah, this is what happened. So now let me explain to you my path to redemption and being productive, and why that actually is a sign of me being a better employee to you, in an interview. That can be really powerful for people too.
Yes, I definitely agree.
Yeah, and the other thing is doing outreaches and trainings to other attorneys, especially private defense attorneys. I think you guys know a lot of this stuff already, but maybe we could collaborate on outreach to private attorneys or the private bar or something like that, because there are a lot of defense attorneys who don't know, or at least have forgotten, the long-term implications of certain guilty pleas. Like I know a lot of defense attorneys are able to negotiate a plea that they think is good for their client in the short term because they avoid jail time or something like that. But if you plead guilty, even if it's to do deferred adjudication, if you plead guilty to a family violence offense, that's it. That's the
Yeah.
that's the ballpark for the rest of their lives in the state of Texas. Doesn't matter what happens in the future. If they've got even a dismissed deferred adjudication case involving family violence, they are never going to be eligible for deferred adjudication again on any offense. And so having the
And
like working together to give outreach to attorneys to explain like there
Yeah.
are serious consequences. And it's sort of, you know, it's in the same vein as that Padilla case from several years ago on the immigration and private attorneys, defense attorneys not explaining the immigration consequences of certain guilty pleas. I just think there's a lot of room for educating private attorneys
Yeah.
on, you know, avoiding jail time isn't always the most important thing, or it may be one of the most important things, but like jail time isn't the only serious long-term consequence of a
Yeah.
guilty plea.
and that family violence finding, like as a practitioner, right? If you've got that holistic client-centered view on a case, I mean, you know, maybe don't quote me on it. I know I'm being recorded, but it's just not that hard of a thing to get removed when you really are negotiating with the prosecutor about the full picture of somebody's life.
Yeah.
So there are real things that can be proactively done to prevent that harm.
Yes. I think that advocacy with the education is very important, because I don't think a lot of people even take the time to do that. And I know for all of us, just the overall well-being of our clients, like it's not just, okay, get us through the door, get your case resolved. Like we're literally trying to better them and make sure that that cycle of poverty does not continue to generate simply because they've gotten in a situation where their conviction is going to keep them from getting a new job, where the conviction is going to keep them from doing whatever. So that I think you all may have hit the nail on the head with the teaching the private bar also. No shade, of course, but just
Well, there's a new
let it go.
program. There's a new program that's being established. It's called the Managed Assigned Counsel Program. It's a county program being run by an amazing director, Kenneth Hardin. And they're going to be overseeing all of the court-appointed misdemeanor cases. So like Ethan, when you're trying to deal with a case and they've caught a B misdemeanor, driving while license invalid, right? Anyone receiving representation on that case in the county court, if y'all don't do that level, but like it's obviously going to be connected to the traffic stuff, that managed assigned counsel is providing that kind of training. So it would be the perfect plug in at this point, because there's, for the very first time ever, those misdemeanor court appointed attorneys are going to have some oversight and training and social services and all that kind of stuff. So there's a real positive potential avenue there.
Wonderful. Before we wrap up, did you all want to go and share some of the cases or any case that you've had that's just been life-changing for someone, or who you would say has been just exemplary of what your organization represents and the type of work that we can do? I know personally I've helped so many individuals that were in a situation where they didn't realize that their deferred adjudication was going to prevent them from moving forward in their life. And I'm glad that Lone Star was able to get our unit up and going, just to give these people the opportunity for that fresh start. Numerous people, I can't even probably count how many at this point have just been so grateful to know that I have a chance. I can do something now without people looking at me like I'm a criminal. Ultimately, our criminal justice system is supposed to serve time, do the crime, serve the time, whatever, and then that's supposed to be it. But we live in a society where that conviction status is going to be like the scarlet letter on your chest forever. So just seeing people get that breath of fresh air, even if it seems so minuscule, is like really big for me. And hopefully Lone Star is going to be known for giving that chance to so many individuals that have had that run-in with the criminal justice system.
Yeah, so there's a case, it's actually ongoing, that I think is like an exemplary, what am I trying to say? It is a very good example of the kind of work that I do and the kind of work that I really want to do. And so I have a client who was homeless. He's since been able to find a place to stay, but he came to us and he had over 20 outstanding traffic tickets across the state of Texas because many years ago he was a long haul truck driver. And of course, he wasn't driving his own truck, he was driving his employer's truck, and the truck wasn't well maintained. But unfortunately, the driver is the one getting those tickets. And so all over the state, he's got these tickets and he's homeless. He doesn't have a vehicle. His license is suspended, of course. And he has no means to take care of all of those. And so I took him on and took all of his cases, and I've been dealing with courts all over the state. Thankfully, because of the pandemic, I have not had to travel all over the state. But I've been helping each of those 20 cases, and then we discovered more in a different county because when we started talking to DPS, they found new ones. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to report these too." And so that's the kind of work that I am doing, and the kind of work that I want to expand on, because when you have one unpaid traffic ticket or misdemeanor C case, you often have more than one. And sometimes you have them that you don't even know about. You driving through a county and get pulled over, get a speeding ticket, and then, get home and get busy with life and totally forget about that ticket. And so, then warrants can be issued and all of that mess. And so that client is, like I said, a really good example of the extent to which your traffic tickets can get out of control and make you unable to deal with them. And I can step in and I can get all of those tickets taken care of and get your license back. At least that's the dream. So
Awesome. Yeah, Neha, did you have a?
I'm thinking of one. It's actually my first client who I got at Restoring Justice. He was a client like so many of our clients. This was not his first interaction with the criminal legal system. He had been, accused of an offense, a felony offense, when he was a teenager, and had been appointed just really inadequate counsel, and he ended up pleading guilty after sitting in jail for quite a while, and served 4 years in prison. And so, that's really, developmental stages, like late teens into your early 20s. And then he's released from prison, and, like so many people who have records, he picked up a technical violation, something that, a victimless crime, as some would say. Like, there's really nobody that's being harmed here, except there's a technical violation of the law. And he, because of that technical violation, he spends another 2 years in prison. And then is finally released in the summer of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. And he's homeless when he gets out because, he's been in for, over 6 years now and just doesn't have any resources available to him. And, this time he knows that he needs to, make sure he's on top of everything, make sure he's doing everything the right way. And he does, and he's really trying, but because of the pandemic, certain things he has to do are just not possible. They're just not possible anymore because offices aren't open, certain government buildings aren't open. And, he's trying his hardest, but just there's certain things that are still falling through the cracks out of no fault of his own. But, he's doing really well for himself. He's connecting himself with resources, really taking the initiative to find support, housing, spiritual support, even employment. And it's actually when he goes for a job interview that he finds out through his potential employer that there's a warrant out for his arrest for the very same technical violation. And that's when, one of the community organizations that he'd been connected with connected him to us. And, we immediately got on the case, were able to get the warrant cleared. And our social services team provided additional support beyond the resource he already had for himself. So he was doing really, really well on bond. And then within a few months, we were able to get the case dismissed because, for all the same reasons we've already talked about, it was the middle of the pandemic. It was impossible for him to not be in violation of this technical statute. And I think that, that's really an example of just kind of stepping in and stopping the cycle from continuing at just a really, really crucial moment. And, you know, I hate to think about what would have happened if he'd not been able to connect with us that month. Like if he waited a year, he maybe would have ended up in jail for months with a bad lawyer who's not doing anything on his case, like for so many of our other clients.
Mm. Did you want to jump in with the anecdote, Drew?
You know, the only story I have is just to share in this week's kind of story. We had another staff attorney. Well, there was a client who, because of a prior conviction, his history, right, not being sealed and all that stuff, he was enhanced. And so it was a first-degree felony facing 25 years to life. He had been sitting for 3 years in jail, not convicted, pending case. We stepped onto the case, and within 2-3 weeks, I don't, Neha, if you know, chime in, but Eric's mere presence on the case, us being a staff attorney, after meeting and having the prosecutor review the case again and realize that they're going to have to do a trial evaluation on it, they dismissed the case. 3 years of this man's life for a case that was never should have been charged and dismissed. And I mean, that story to me just speaks so much to the need of our mission, because like, that's not like we did this miraculous thing. We just showed up for somebody. We just spoke up for somebody. And if more people just merely stand up and speak up for somebody, then this system can change and mass incarceration can end. And we at Restoring Justice try to provide the broader community the ability to come in and volunteer and stand up and speak up for people.
I love that. Thank you all so much for joining in on this conversation. Lone Star Legal Aid, again, if you would like to apply for services, our 1-800 numbers, 1-800-733-8394, or you can also apply for services online. We have the civil legal services game on lock, and we are happy to have been able to partner with Restoring Justice. Their information is also going to be available after the presentation. So yeah, like that's all I have. I'm very happy just to know that there are so many dedicated attorneys out here who really are boots on the ground trying to make a difference out here. So thank you all for what you do, and thank you guys for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.